Oh, yes, Miss Morrow. What can I do for you?
Dr. Davis, we'd like you to appear on our Humanities Club panel. Man's Fate in the 20th Century, 11 o'clock Friday, Memorial Auditorium. Dr. Swanton of Philosophy and Dr. Zwicker of the Religion Department have already accepted. You'd represent science. Oh, I'm sorry it's such short notice. It's just that...
Just that you weren't sure you wanted to ask the neuter Dr. Neutron. Isn't that my nom de campus?
Yes, sir. I mean, I don't know, sir.
I'd like to help, Miss Morrow, but I'm a very busy man. And I hardly feel qualified on the subject, regardless of the century. I'm afraid man will have to ponder his fate without my help.
But we wanted the viewpoints of man as seen through the microscope, sort of. Well, the scientist's view.
Then suppose I give you mine, here and now, and you can offer it to your panel and save both of us a great deal of time. Man is a small part of a world that can be seen and felt and measured. That is what concerns me here in my laboratory. As to his fate, it is simply to exist. To be a tiny speck of matter and energy in motion. I am a physicist. I hope my particular fate is to be the best physicist I know how. Until I arrive at that moment of time and space when I cease to exist. That occupies all the time and energy I have. Perhaps someday when I'm old and tired, I will indulge myself in speculating in such whimsy as a great beyond, instead of the facts of here and now. Until then, Miss Morrow, thank you for your invitation, and good afternoon.
Insight and exploration in depth of the spiritual conflicts of the 20th century. Insight.
How do you do? I'm Father Kieser. In the latter part of the 19th century, in the wake of the great scientific breakthroughs, the harmony which had previously existed between science and religion was brutally shattered. Science suddenly erupted into our ideas, Emile Zola said, with mass and energy, with a sovereign, irresistible force. All religion, all ideas of divinity tottered and fell. Men like Robert Ingersoll, Julian Huxley, Karl Marx, Comte, Proudhon, and Lenin taught that the progress of science was making religion unnecessary and obsolete. Science, these men thought, could answer all men's questions and solve all his problems. It promised mankind complete fulfillment, material abundance, and a veritable heaven upon earth. With the experience of the last 50 years behind us, and with the current world situation before us, we can't be so naive. Science has not solved all our problems. It has even created some new ones. It has given us great material abundance, but it has also put into our hands the power to destroy this planet. In recent years, scientists of all kinds have been realizing the limitations of their own fields of study, and have been turning to religion for the answers to the questions which science poses, but cannot answer. In religion, these men see the indispensable ally of science in the service of humanity.
You did it, Doc. Congratulations.
We did it.
No, I'm just a computer artist. 1 + 1 = 2 on a grand scale.
Theory and technology are the bride and groom of science. When I write it up, the name of Dr. Nick Prescott is going to be at the top of the page.
Thanks.
We've proven that it works on a small scale, but I'm almost certain it has no limits. So simple, just a piece of glass.
But a very special piece of glass.
Just ordinary light, Nick. But we can avalanche it, intensify it, and obtain almost unlimited energy density. This is a major breakthrough. I think you and I deserve a little celebration. Well, I thought there was still some of this brain bomb left over from our late night sessions. I made it myself, so I know it won't kill you.
Thanks.
You know, historically, I don't think this was one of man's dreams to control light. But To use it, yes. However, to manipulate it in this fashion, no. No. I don't think that ever occurred as a possible. By the way, do you realize we haven't got a name for this thing?
Well, it deserves a good one. Why don't you do it, Doc? It's your baby.
Well, long technological names give me a pain in the ear. For now, I guess we'll just christen it the Avalanche Laser. Not very fancy, but it fits more or less. Decisions, decisions, decisions.
I wish they were all that easy.
That had a ponderous ring for a simple thing like a name. What's the matter?
I was just thinking.
Well, I'll admit that's probably quite a strain for you.
There, any more of that home brew left?
If not, there's more where it came from. Sure. Right here. Tell me, is thinking really that painful?
Oh, no, it's just... Well... Look, Doc, that, harmless-looking tube here did that. Poof! And we both know it's only the acorn. From it mighty oaks can grow. Well, that's hardly the metaphor.
Well?
Well, haven't you thought about it?
Well, certainly. I invented it.
But this is an inch piece of steel. It's an inch thick. Cutting steel, the hardest metal made. Now, just look at it. That low-voltage pipsqueak over there did that.
Not all of our colleagues are as unskeptical as you are. We needed something dramatic, Nick. They won't accept your theoretical computations as proof.
Well, they're not blind, either. Having seen it, they won't forget it.
Well, I admit it's pyrotechnics. I've always had a flair from it. From now on, we'll leave it to the comic strips. Agreed?
I wish we could.
So what is it, Nick? Stop fencing. Get down to the facts.
Okay, facts. Now, this is no toy. There's no mere pyrotechnics for laboratory demonstration, no quaint device for the edification and amusement of your friends at the Academy. This is the forerunner of avalanche lasers of terrifying potential. The amount of energy that can be harnessed in this device is staggering, and not just in a single thin beam. They can probe an entire state, or they can hit the eye of a fly at 1,000 miles.
I'm going to have to remember what I put in this last batch.
No, I'm serious, Doc. I'm worried over the results, the effect of our so-called accomplishment.
So I'm beginning to look like Dr. Frankenstein to you, huh? You seem to overlook the fact that the avalanche laser's prime function will be in the field of communications. Thousands of messages on a single beam, not to mention the applications in industry, medicine, and so forth. But all this is really unimportant. What's important is that we've accomplished something the world should be aware of.
Just make the world aware and then quietly walk away, huh?
What else do you suggest?
Well, that you stop for a minute and consider what the world is going to do with it.
I am not the world's conscience. What others do isn't my affair.
But you will admit that whole cities can be made to look like this piece of steel. Oh, maybe we could be selective and just wipe out the suburbs. And communications. Now, that can be used to wipe out vast areas of communication. Disrupt the whole thing. As far as the possible side effects, we just don't have any idea. Now, you can't turn something like this loose on the world and then wash your hands away with it. You don't have the right.
The right? Who are you to tell me what my rights are? I don't have to wash my hands of anything. You're the one who needs a good wash. To scrub all that moralistic muck out of your head. If everyone went around with his head in the clouds worrying about this and that, nothing would ever get done. We'd still be living in caves and eating bugs.
And throwing rocks instead of bombs.
There's something you should learn if you're going to continue in this work and hope to make a contribution, Nick. Good and evil are not the province of the scientist. We don't have to measure the devil's tail or contemplate the number of angels on the head of a pin. Our job is to push out the frontiers of knowledge, period.
Dr. Davis is a brilliant man, and yet his conversation with his assistant would seem to indicate that he has succumbed to an all too common temptation. He has narrowed his vision to the empirical world and closed his mind to all that cannot be seen or felt or touched. The world that Dr. Davis has constructed for himself is nice and comfortable. He's its king. He can manipulate its forces at will. He's not bothered by awkward responsibilities. He's unburdened by spiritual considerations. Other people don't really enter this world of his. They merely brush its periphery. He has chosen to concern himself with the scientifically possible and to ignore the morally right. He has only one concern, his work. He lives for it. He takes tremendous satisfaction from its accomplishment. There's only one problem with this world of Dr. Davis. It is incomplete and it is inadequate. It's only a thin slice of the real world of flesh and blood human beings. He can be content with it only by excluding from his thoughts all that is spiritual, personal, and human. Up until now, Dr. Davis has been able to remain undisturbed in his moral vacuum. But now the candor of his assistant and the consequences of his discovery are making this more and more difficult. He knows that he is a successful scientist, but is he a successful human being?
Pipe I buy from that shop. It's hotter than an atomic pile. Oh, by the way, there's a button missing from that coat.
I'll fix it tonight, after supper. I hope your digestion is all right. We're having sauerbraten. I even made a special trip to the store for that Munich beer you like so much.
That's my Frau. Believe it or not, I've been thinking of sauerbraten all day.
You're home early. Something wrong with the project?
It's not worth discussing.
That's not like the old days. Then we used to talk about your hopes, your plans, your ideas. But now, it's almost as if you'd locked your soul in one of those old trunks in the basement.
Everybody wants to worry about my soul, my conscience, whatever it is. I didn't earn election as a fellow of the American Academy stewing about my soul.
I'm sorry I worry about you, Bill. I won't do it again. I had some foolish notion it was a wife's prerogative.
I'm sorry, Elsa. It's that idiot assistant of mine, Prescott.
But I thought you said he was very bright and that you liked him.
Well, I do, only at our moment of triumph, at completion of the final test, he gets a long face and begins beating his breast. What a memorable moment. Prescott mea culpaing all over the place, calling the avalanche laser a death ray, envisioning scenes of devastated cities and burnt bodies and, a lot of very unscientific schoolboy moralistic nonsense that has nothing to do with me.
Is it possible? The things you said.
Well, certainly it's possible. There's a lot of other things. I could get run over on the way to work tomorrow, but that isn't the point.
And what is?
The point is I'm a physicist. All I've done is to apply my intellect to the knowledge and skills it is built up to gain an insight into the function of light. And with this insight, I developed a method for the control of light energy. I'm not accountable for what some fool may choose to do with it.
You can't hide, Will. Not a man of your caliber. Power begets responsibility.
What? Power begets responsibility? What has that got to do with me? What power?
You have great power. Times I've seen you nearly intoxicated with it. You know what I'm talking about. Those things you just mentioned, the power of your intellect, your knowledge. You might not be able to touch these things with your hands, but in this day and age, they are the essential stuff of power.
But, Ilse, this is a great, big, complicated world we live in. A gigantic, technical, economic, political complex. You make it sound so simple. The university, the foundation, the politicians, the departments and bureaus in Washington, industry, they make the rules. In this huge system, I'm just a hired hand. And my responsibility is to work hard. That's all I'm doing.
Don't try to tell me you're nothing but a little cog in a big wheel. You are a very important man. Just you announce that you're going fishing for the next 5 years. Then you'll see what a small cog you are. Well, please turn around and look at me.
Are you finished?
No. Just one more thing. You implied that the system is responsible for what you do. How can the system be responsible? Don't forget, I was brought up in Nazi Germany. I know what I'm talking about. The organization, the system, the state. These things don't make an ethic. It's the people. It's the individual persons who set the standards. I was only a young girl, but I saw it. When the individual person gives up his reins of responsibility, he has placed his own head in the tyrant's bridle to be driven like a plow horse. I listened to my own father say the same things you said just now. Until it was too late. I better go check the Sauerwarten.
I don't see why you had to bring that up. All it does is upset you.
Maybe it's a good thing to be upset once in a while. Nothing's changed. It's the same today. The fascists or the communists. All their fancy dialectics are nothing but excuses for tyranny. History is a natural process like water running downhill. There's nothing we can do about it. That's what they say. Man determines things. We are responsible for what happens.
You really lay it on the line, don't you, Ilse?
But you want me to do less, Bill?
All of a sudden, everything I worked for is being brought into question. I'm being held accountable to every Hottentot and half-baked idiot on this planet. I can't accept that. I can't. Ilse, if I've been living in a fool's paradise all these years, if that's true, Ilse, how do I get out?
Dr. Davis is now face to face with one of the great spiritual conflicts of the 20th century. The rational control of the power reason has created. Will mankind be able to do this? It all depends. We will be able to control scientific power by moral principle only if we are willing to use our minds to look beyond the data of the laboratory and to ask ourselves, what is the meaning of a human life? What must we do to fulfill its purpose? Professor Werner von Braun, the great space scientist and rocket expert, has said, in this age of space flight and nuclear fission, to use power wisely calls for a moral and ethical climate that, quite frankly, I do not think we now possess. We can achieve it only through many hours of that deep concentration we call prayer. Are we willing to do this? I wonder. It will take effort. Prayer can be the hardest kind of work, but it is certainly the most important work we can now do. Unguided by religious principle, scientific power could destroy us. And yet if properly used, if governed in accordance with spiritual principle, scientific power could increase our freedom, enhance our dignity, and help us closer to God.
Dr. Prescott, thinking is the curse of the human race. First you, then my wife, reminding me that I have to take the responsibility for the avalanche laser. All right, I accept that responsibility. I agree to do what I can to assure the proper use of our discovery. But what's that mean? Power, responsibility, duty, right, wrong, good, evil. Words. Signifying what? As far as I can tell, they merely imply some vague attitude.
They do presuppose an attitude, Doctor, but an attitude based on an integrated view of life that embraces the whole of reality. Not just the empirical part. That's not all of it, not by a long shot.
But if you can't see it or feel it or measure it, how can you be sure it exists?
Because what you do see, what you do feel and measure presupposes it, demands it.
Demands?
Yes, demands. Now, right there, for example, the evidence for an expanding universe. Now, galaxies like this one, millions of light years apart, but still moving away from each other at a uniform rate, calculating back, well, they must have been at a single point around 9 billion years ago. Well, Doc, the whole story of the formation of the Earth, the geological ages, the evolution of life from those early warm seas, and then so recently the baby of the Earth, man, appeared on the scene. Now, I don't care if he evolved from an ape or an orangutan. What's important for us, anyway, is that for the first time in nearly 9 billion years, a human being exists who can look at the world and he can wonder.
I didn't know you had such a flair for drama.
Doc, I can't view the cosmic process as anything but dramatic. It's so shot full with purpose. It obeys laws. It's going someplace. All the evidence points to that.
What are you getting at, Nick?
Well, just this. Now, if, as all the evidence seems to indicate, the universe did have a beginning, then somebody had to begin it. Somebody had to start the whole thing.
And from that you leap to the existence of God?
It's not a leap, Doc. It's a rational conclusion demanded by the evidence of the case.
Let me see if I understand you correctly, Nick. You are trying to use science to prove the existence of God?
No. That's not the role of science. But science does show us phenomena which only God can explain. Now, an expanding universe doesn't make any sense without something to cause it, set it into motion. And a designed universe makes us very certain that this something is a someone. Now, only the existence of an intelligent being can explain the laws that we find written in the very fabric of reality. Now, I, for one, have no choice but to accept the existence of an intelligent God.
But if you do that, you're stuck with the biblical account of creation.
So?
So Clarence Darrow proved before a court of law how unscientific that is. He shot 1,000 holes into the book of Genesis.
He shot 1,000 holes into William Jennings Bryan's interpretation of the book of Genesis, not into Genesis itself.
What do you mean? Bryan's position was that of Orthodox Christianity, wasn't it?
Come on, it was not. William Jennings Bryan was a pious boob. His heart was in the right place, but he certainly didn't use his head. Now, he insisted on a narrow, literal interpretation of Genesis when Moses had no intention of being interpreted literally. Now, as a result, he twisted Moses' whole meaning and missed the whole point.
What point? Prescott, really, this first day, second day creation stuff is fairly explicit and pretty hard to swallow.
Well, try to understand Moses, Doc. Now, here, he had a group of ignorant nomads on his hands. Now, there were certain religious truths that he wanted to get over to them. Now, he quite naturally spoke in a language that they could understand and in a literary form that was popular. Moses wasn't trying to give them a scientific blueprint of creation. He wasn't concerned with how God created. He was concerned with telling the Hebrew people that God did create.
Sit down, will you, Prescott? You make me nervous standing over me like Jehovah.
Sorry.
Let me ask you one question. Don't you see any contradiction between an evolving universe and a creating God?
Not at all. Now, evolution's a process begun by God, guided by him to realize his own purposes.
And they are?
I think evolution fulfills its purpose in man. We are the flower of evolution, its high point. It took millions upon millions of years to produce a body like ours, a body into which God could infuse a spiritual soul. That's what makes us so different, makes man so unique.
With the power of reason?
With the wonderful power of reason. I use my head to help you control light. Why shouldn't I use it to relate myself to God?
It's not really as simple as you make it sound. Finding God.
I didn't say it was easy, Doc. No, it's not easy at all. It's a little bit like Jacob wrestling with the angel. You end up caught in the grip of what you thought you could grasp.
That could be embarrassing.
I think humbling would be a better word. Just to look at all of reality, to adjust yourself to it. It's a humbling experience. But I think a very valuable one. I think humility is the answer to so many problems.
Like the proper use of the avalanche laser?
I think so. The greater the power, the greater the humility which has to accompany its use.
But it never seems to work that way. Power corrupts, and absolute power seems to corrupt absolutely.
Yes, unfortunately, you're correct. But there is one major exception.
Who?
You wouldn't accept it if I told you.
I haven't stopped you yet, Prescott. Who?
Christ. Doc, Christ as God had total power, yet willingly he became man. And he practiced perfect humility all of his life. Now think of it, the God who holds the world in the palm of his hands allows himself to be murdered by his own creatures. Boy, that is real humility and real love.
He means a lot to you, doesn't he?
Nothing would make much sense without him. He's the substratum of existence. Without him, life would be absurd.
Absurd? That is too easy an out. What's the quotation? The child is father to the man?
You mean your brainchild?
My brainchild. You know, controlling light is a small thing compared with controlling what we do with the avalanche laser. That's where we started, wasn't it?
Started and finished.
Thank you for the trip, Nick.
Dr. Dick Prescott speaks in the tradition of Aristotle, Copernicus, and Isaac Newton. His vision of the world is an integral one. He sees the essential harmony that exists between science and religion. Both science and religion challenge and feed man's mind. Both are concerned with the truth. They approach it in different ways, they use different methods, and yet so often in their ultimate conclusions they agree. There may be apparent contradictions between science and religion, but there can be no real ones. Why is this? Because science and religion both give us the truth, and the truth cannot contradict itself. Neither science nor religion has all the answers. Each needs the other, each complements the other. Pope Pius XII says, the scientist, as he strives to investigate the boundless resources of animate and inanimate nature, daily discovers more and more of the treasure hidden in the world by the Creator. He is, as it were, the discoverer of new lands for the greater glory of his Lord. And he is also, to the same extent, the benefactor of his fellow man, at whose service he puts the result of his work. By working together, science and religion can do much to ennoble the human race and enhance the dignity of man. Both are necessary for the full flowering of the human spirit.
Insight is a production of the Paulist Fathers, a group of Catholic priests who serve their God by serving those outside their church.